There's over 600 times in the scriptures that God says, do not fear. In case you don't realize, that is an astronomical amount of times compared to other topics. It far excels every other word. Fear can take and destroy you and me. Matter of fact, it is the very key that Satan uses in our lives to get us to sin against the Lord, to get us to make unbelievably wrong decisions that have devastating consequences. Fear. Four-letter word, you better believe it. This morning we're jumping back into the life of David again. And we're looking at a time frame probably 3 to 4 years after David has killed Goliath. Saul has taken and he's used David, sending him out to battle with the other generals, in war. And David excels and exceeds all the generals that King Saul has. He excels as far as a warrior is concerned of all the warriors in the nation of Israel. There is no one like David. And of course, the song that the Israelite women are singing throughout the nation as they dance and as they rejoice before Yahweh is that Saul has slain his thousands, but David his tens of thousands. So Saul becomes extremely jealous of David. And it comes to the point where he realizes that David is going to be the next king and not his son Jonathan. And he wants David dead. And so when David is there in the palace with Saul, Saul will take and hurl spears at him to try to kill him. David will escape with his life. The Lord protects him. And what we're going to see this morning is that David, as a young man, escapes and goes to the very man who anointed him years earlier, the prophet Samuel, whom the Lord made it clear to Samuel that David would be the next king of the Israelite nation. And David goes to the prophet Samuel to find comfort, to find security, to find out exactly what is going on. And so these stories are recorded for us in the book of Samuel, David's life. And they're there for you and me so that as we read the stories, we reflect upon them and how they apply to you and me. They were written for our admonition. If you don't learn from the lives of other people, from their mistakes and from their successes, you are going to flounder in all the decisions that you make in your life. You want to copy the good, and you definitely want to stay away from the bad decisions that other people have made, right? If only we would do that, we would be extremely successful, wouldn't we? I'm hoping that this morning, that as we look at this story of David, we're going to see that David makes some bad decisions based upon fear. But what's amazing in this, we're going to see the kindness of God in David's life. Even as he's running, he is still coming after the Lord. He is wanting to do what the Lord wants him to do, but fear is driving him to do some crazy things at the same time. Norm, in the heat of a battle, there's incredible fear. Bullets whizzing around you, all kinds of firing going on. May even see some of your friends die right before your eyes. That's a time when fear is like so overwhelming it could be paralyzing. And it could cause you to definitely make the wrong move. And it's over. But if you stay calm in the midst of whatever circumstance or situation that you find yourself in, if you stay calm, if you talk to the Lord and say, what's my next step? Do you believe that He'll direct you? Do you believe that He'll enable you to make the right decision, to make the right move? Or are you going to lean on your own understanding and let fear drive you? David has a mixture. And what we see on this map is how he was running from Saul. Down here's Jerusalem. Let me get it. Where are we at here? Right here. And David's going to run from Saul up here, and he's going to run up the Ramah. And that's where Samuel's at. And what we read is Saul ends up sending a contingent of his guys to grab David and to bring him back for execution. And if you're familiar with your Bible, the first contingent of guys come, and David's already there with Samuel talking with the prophet. And as they come, Samuel, the man of God, prays, Lord, keep us safe. You remember what happens to the first contingent of unbelievable fighting guys that come to take David? The Spirit of God falls upon them. And they start prophesying. And they won't even lay their hands on David Word comes back to Saul that transpired. Guess what happens? Saul sends a second contingent out. They come up to get David. Same exact thing happens again. Second contingent starts prophesying. God won't let them even come anywhere near David or Samuel. Saul sends out the third contingent. These are the best warriors there are in the nation. Guess what happens to them? Same thing. They can't lay a hand on David. Now, Saul has said, I've had enough. So Saul personally heads to Ramah. And he takes his elite bodyguards with him, and they're gone up to take care of the situation themselves. And guess what happens to King Saul? King Saul takes off all his clothes, and he's totally naked. And he prophesies along with the rest of them as the Spirit of God comes upon him. God humbles him tremendously as he's naked before everybody, the king. And Saul isn't able to lay a hand on David. Now, let me ask you. If you saw that happen, where these unbelievable warriors, and you know them personally, and you have led them into battle, and you have watched these guys fight, and they have killed hundreds and hundreds of Philistines right by your side, and when they come, and they're coming for you, and there's numerous of these individuals coming for you, and all of a sudden they fall down and just start worshiping God. And this happens 4 times. Wouldn't that be enough for you to say, woo-hoo! God, you have no problem protecting me, right? The threat on David's life was real. And so David flees, and he leaves Ramah, and he heads down the Nob. When he gets to Nob, he's full speed running for his life. There's some other situations that have transpired. But David ends up with the priest there at Nob, and he lies to the high priest. And he gets the showbread, and he takes that to eat. And remember the priest? Yeah, first gives David Goliath's sword because it was kept there by the priest. And so David didn't even have a sword when he was running from Saul. And David lied to the priest, and he told him that Saul was sending him on an errand when he was actually running from Saul. Now what would happen is Saul would find out that this priest gave David Goliath's sword and gave him bread because Dog the Edomite was there, and he told Saul, King Saul, exactly what transpired. And so that priest and his whole household, 85 men, Saul would have slaughtered because they helped David. David would then run from Nob, and he would do something really stupid. He would go into the land of the Philistines. This area over here that you see shaded different color, that's where all the Philistines are at. And so he would run to Gath, to Achish, one of the kings of the Philistine city of Gath. And you go, why in the world would he do this? He had been killing thousands and thousands of Philistines. He killed their champion Goliath, and now David runs to the Philistine king. Guess what? That's exactly what you would do if you became a traitor to your own nation. You would run to your enemies for refuge. And normally, your enemies would take you in and say, oh, yeah, especially a good warrior like you, we can really use you to help fight the Israelites. And so David ends up before Achish, the king of Gath. And this is what we're going to see transpiring here in 1 Samuel 21. It says, then David arose and he fled that day from Saul, and he went to Achish, king of Gath. But the servants of Achish, the king, said to him, is this not David, the king of the land? Did they not sing of this one as they danced, saying, Saul has slain his thousands, and David his tens of thousands? David took these words to heart, and he greatly feared Achish, king of Gath. So he disguised his sanity before them, and he acted insanely in their hands. And he scribbled on the doors of the gate, and he let saliva run down into his beard. Then Achish said to his servants, what? Behold, you see the man behaving as a madman. Why do you bring him to me? Do I lack madmen that you've brought this one to act the madman in my presence? Shall this one come into my house and serve me? And Achish said, get him out of here. And David fled. What we see in this story is fear of Saul was driving David. It's interesting because he had just experienced the Lord supernaturally protecting him up there with the prophet Samuel. And then he does this crazy thing. He runs to the Philistines. What in the world was he thinking? He only had one thing in his mind. Saul's going to kill me. Saul's going to kill my mom and dad, kill all my brothers. We're all gone down. And so fear drives him to do an unbelievably stupid thing. He goes into the city there at Gath, and Achish's, the king, his servants, they're talking to David, and they come to realize who he is. You're the one. You're the one all the women in Israel sing about, that you have slain your tens of thousands. In other words, you've killed us, Philistines. And when David realizes that they know who he is and what he has done, okay, now listen to me. They didn't have newspapers back then, okay? They didn't have cell phones. News did not just, fly across from one nation to the other. It had to go by word of mouth, right? David was thinking, I'll be okay. They really don't know who I am, and I can get in here, and I'll work my way up. And in the future, it's kind of interesting because he ends up working for Achish, the king of Gath. But in this situation, He says, David took these words to heart, and he greatly feared the Philistine king. Greatly feared. So he's like, it's over for me. I'm right here inside the city. They're all surrounding me. I'm toast. And so he decides, you know what I need to do? They're gone to get the king. And I got to act like I'm crazy. And so David does a little bit of deception. Stephen, do you want to act crazy for us and give us an example of what David looked like? Having a big beard like Eric. David, which in the Middle East, this is not a good thing, they say. I really don't know. But you don't let saliva run down your beard, okay? So David starts spitting out saliva, and he's trying to foam at the mouth, and he's got this all running down his beard, and you can rest assured he's rolling his eyes and doing all kinds of crazy things. And we translate this that he took and he scribbled on the doors there in verse 13. The Greek translation of the Hebrew, the LXX, translates this Hebrew word as pounding on the doors of the gate. Doesn't matter. He's pounding and probably scribbling and, you know, and saliva running out of his mouth and everything, so that he does get kicked out. I like what Achish says. You see the man, he's behaving like a madman. Why did you bring him to me? Do I lack my own madman? You've brought this foreigner madman to me? I got enough crazy people. Get him out of here. God in this situation, not ideal in what David has done and where the fear has driven him to. But God is merciful. And he causes the king to kick him out of there. The next verse says that David escaped to Adullam, another town further south, not in Philistine territory. And so we look at this situation and we say, look where fear took David. Do you realize there would have been a completely different story had David not allowed his life to be driven by extreme fear? What would have happened if he would have stayed up north with Samuel and continued to trust the Lord? We wouldn't be reading this, would we? Our lives are made up of the decisions that you and I make every day. Some good, some bad. What's really great about it is, as long as you got breath in you, like David does here, you are able to make a turn back to the Lord after making a bad decision. Is there consequences? Yes, there's consequences of what could have been, and unfortunately what did transpire. But God's able to take even those bad situations And he's able to turn them around and use them in our life to teach us, if we're teachable and if we'll let him. David goes on to pen 2 psalms. Mark them down in your mind. Psalm 34 and Psalm 56. You're going to see that Achish is called Abimelech in both of these psalms, okay? But it's the king of Gath. And you're going to see in those, as you read them, you're going to see David's triumph, that even in the midst of him being filled with fear, he's turning to the Lord. And so we got a clear picture by looking at Psalm 34 and Psalm 56. And I'm going to get you to go there yourself. I'm not even going to tell you what's in them. God is very merciful towards you and me. But you and I don't have to make bad decisions based upon fear. I'm going to tell you one story in my life that I am so grateful to the Lord for. That involved fear. That Satan tried to use that fear, and I refused to take my eyes off the Lord. And Beth is my witness. When you get the word cancer given to you, and when you see the cancer on the screen yourself, I'll tell you, that's a scary thing. Fear, you better believe it. Especially when 60,000 plus die every year from bladder cancer. Now, I could have easily submitted to the doctor. And I could have listened to what the doctor was telling me to do. But I thank God I did not. Instead, I came after the Lord and I said, Lord, what do you want me to do? Huge difference. Doctor's just a man. A fallible man. And so in that process, he used my daughter Sarah in my life. She said, Dad, you've got to watch this series, The Truth About Cancer. You've got to watch it. And so we did, Beth and I together. And that began a whole process of taking me down a different road. See, my cancer doctor, with fear driving me, said, Mark, you've got to take BCG treatments right after your surgery. I said, BCG treatments, what are they? Oh, well, we take tuberculosis and we put it in your bladder. We shoot it up into your bladder. You got to hold it in your bladder for an hour while the tuberculosis burns the lining of your bladder. And I said, why? He says, well, we hope that that will take and stimulate your immune system to fight against the cancer in your bladder. I said, well, what's the fallout? What could happen? Well, you could get tuberculosis. Well, that's no problem. We can treat tuberculosis. Okay. What else? Well, we can, and this happens often, we burn a hole in your bladder. But that's okay. We can go in and repair that. Okay. What else can happen? Well, we can have major failure, and we'll take your bladder out and we'll put a bag on you. Oh. Okay. So, Doc, what's the success rate? Oh, the success rate of using this treatment's great. Really? Yeah. Okay. And so I said, with Beth sitting there, I said to the doc, wanted me to start, this was after the surgery, wanted me to start the treatments immediately. Right then and there, he tried to get me, you got to start this, you got to be done right away. Next day, let's go. I said, Doc, I said, before I give you an answer, I said, my wife are going to pray about this. Oh, he rolled his eyes. And he said, don't you waste any time, young man. You get back to me by Monday. And this was Thursday or whatever. I said, okay, we'll get back to you. And so, using fear, using the timetable, trying to force me to take the treatment. Well, when we got online and started doing our research, as soon as we got home, we saw that the success rate of the BCG treatments in the United States was 40% successful. Greatly successful, okay. And so then we looked at Germany, who were the leaders in bladder cancer treatment, doing the exact same treatment. Did it the exact same textbook way as the United States, I mean to a T. And you know what the German success rate was? 0%. Not even one. I said, I choose to believe the Germans. And did not take the treatment. I know individuals who took the treatment. I know individuals who have a bag on the outside of them today. I know individuals who took the treatment and the cancer grew right back while they were taking the treatment. I say and I use this story because I don't know what you are facing as far as a situation that is causing anxiety inside of you, causing fear, and causing you to head in a direction that you should not head in. And there's only one way you're going to know what direction to head in. Am I right? Yeah. There's no other way. There's only one way. The King. The King who knows everything. The King who has designed your life. The King, if necessary, who can step in and cause your enemies to fall down and start prophesying and praying face down on the ground as they're coming to kill you. The King who can do the impossible. But see, your trust has to be in Him. David almost got himself killed, not just by Saul, who was after him, but he almost got himself killed in Gath. Decisions made by fear never turn out good. Am I right? Soon as that fear comes whipping into your mind and the anxiety begins to fill you, the best thing that you and I can do is right away turn to the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. Look at Psalm 34. You're going to love it. And right then and there, David knew that he was in trouble. Fear filled him, and he's like, Lord, what in the world do I do now? He said, you better act like a madman. You better act like you're insane. Because right now you are insane, David. You made a really stupid decision. God showed incredible mercy. Now listen to me. Not every decision based upon your fear, and you make a decision based upon your fear, not every decision God's going to have mercy on you. Am I right? Yeah. I don't know who the Lord's talking to this morning. But don't let that fear drive you. Come to Jesus. His perfect love will cast out that fear. The mind that is stayed on him will be kept in perfect peace. Am I right? He's the one who will then be able to guide your steps, not based upon fear, but based upon truth. And he'll help you. I know guys who were saved in war situations. They were in terrible situations. And instead of being driven by fear, which would have said run or do this or do that, they chose to listen to the Lord. And in their listening to the Lord and what he had them do, their life was spared. When fear was screaming another thing. Trust him. Don't let fear drive you in your decisions. Let the Lord lead you in those decisions. Turn to him. He loves you infinitely, and he wants to give you wisdom. Making all the right decisions to honor and to glorify him. Closing hymn, Beth.